So we pretty much know all of the details involving the case of Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. And through all of the witness testimony, facts brought up in the court, and just general information about this case, there is undeniable proof that Karmelo Anthony should be found not guilty. In court, they revealed that Austin didn't just push him to the ground. He basically jacked him up and was on some, he's a big dude. Karmelo is 5'8", barely probably 5'8", 130 pounds. A smaller frame kid. He was a kid. Austin and Hunter, they are bigger white dudes, right? 200 pounds, 6 foot. Not to mention, weeks prior, did y'all know that Austin ended up putting his own father in the hospital? He ended up beating up his dad and putting him in the goddamn hospital. So if he did that to his pops as one individual, imagine what both of them could have did together to little Karmelo. And ultimately, I'm gonna say this. This whole situation was, one, keep your hands to yourself. It could have been prevented. And also, two, this was a ego thing. Because if Austin would have just said, okay, you got it, I don't want you here, I'm just gonna leave. Or he could have even just went and got an adult being a Karen. That would have been better in this situation. But yeah, y'all, this case isn't really going too well, man. In my opinion, the defense for Karmelo is doing a horrible job.
Meanwhile,
I'm questioning the jury. I'm asking them, how did you reach your verdict? How did you reach it so quickly? What happened here? It was a 4-inch knife. He used it one time. He was pushed. I'm not saying that it was right, but what are you doing? How did you get this verdict? I'd want to know. My whole identity as a defense attorney would be in question, right? I'm questioning my identity right now, and I have nothing to do with this case. How could you come back like that? I would be enraged. I'm enraged right now. This is very upsetting. And then on top of it, to compound it, this dumb judge didn't allow cameras in the courtroom. What was your wisdom? What were you thinking? How you put on a robe? Are you that much of an imbecile that you won't let cameras in the courtroom in a case like this? This is not a rape case. This is something different. This is something that's clearly the whole community is enraged, and you knew that before the trial started. So, I mean, this is very upsetting.
You can see the reaction.
This process is shown that black lives do not matter in Collin County. It showed us that time and time in American history, it has shown emotions. It put emotions over the law. After Trayvon Martin and so many countless names, it has shown us that black life is not safe in Collin County. It showed us that they did not listen to the law. It showed clearly that a judge interfered in this process. It showed very clearly that a black boy was allowed, not one black soul on a jury. An all white jury convicted him in 2 to 3 hours.
What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for words. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more. You can't walk away no more.
What's up, family? Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications because we're getting into something real today. A jury just came back with a guilty verdict in the Karmelo Anthony murder trial. And they did it in 3 hours, not 3 days, 3 hours. And right now, you got activists outside that courthouse in tears. You got people online saying the system failed, and you got commentators talking about everything except what the facts actually showed. So we're going to break this down today in plain English, no spin, no agenda, just the real story of what happened and what it means for all of our communities. And here's what this actually looks like in real life, family. It's a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas, the kind of event where kids are competing, parents are watching from the stands, and coaches are walking the field. Normal day, normal setting. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, a confrontation started between Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf, 2 teenagers who never should have ended up in the same tragic story. Words got exchanged, things escalated, and Austin Metcalf ended up stabbed with a 5-inch knife and lost his life. And I want you to hold on to that one detail because it matters more than almost everything else in the entire case. Karmelo Anthony brought a 5-inch knife to a school track meet, not a parking lot, not a back alley somewhere. A school event surrounded by kids, surrounded by adults, and surrounded by people who could have stepped in, and he had that knife on him. That's not a coincidence, family. That's a choice made before he ever walked onto that field. The prosecution's argument was that Karmelo didn't just react in the heat of the moment either. They argued he provoked the situation, waited for his moment, and then delivered a deliberate strike. And when all of that evidence was laid out in front of the 12 regular people sitting in that jury box, they came back in 3 hours. 3 hours. You want to understand how clear cut the evidence was? That's your answer right there. Most people take longer than that to decide where they want to eat dinner. The jury didn't wrestle with this for days because there wasn't much to wrestle with. And here's another detail that didn't get enough attention. Karmelo Anthony never took the stand. His own attorneys kept him off the witness stand, which means the jury never once heard him look them in the eye and explain why he felt his life was in danger. Never heard him say he was scared. Never heard him describe what he was thinking in that moment. The legal analyst covering the trial said that decision likely hurt him badly because without his own testimony, the jury had nothing to hold on to that pointed toward fear or self-defense. All they had was the evidence in front of them, and that evidence told one story. Now that we know what actually happened that day, let's talk about the very different story that was being sold online for the past several months.
Karmelo Anthony, who has been almost entirely emotionless during this entire time, started crying. His mother was audibly upset. We could see her, she was leaning over in her seat. Karmelo Anthony could not rein it in, despite we could see, his lawyers rubbing his back and telling him, to pull it together. The judge wanted to continue, and Karmelo Anthony just could not pull it together. And I also want to remark that the lawyer, Karmelo Anthony's lawyer, said, "Judge, can I take him out?" It was inaudible where he was asking to take him. The judge said, he is now convicted of murder. Things move differently now. He said, you can take him to the back for a little bit, but the judge making it known that things have changed now.
I just got some notes from our local reporter who is inside the courtroom. So when that guilty verdict was read, I'm told that Karmelo Anthony was crying. He was shaking. His defense attorney kept his arm around his shoulders the entire time. And also I'm told that Austin Metcalf's twin brother, Hunter, this was the first time he was inside the courtroom when that guilty verdict was read. I'm told it was really emotional from both sides after that murder verdict. And as for what's next, Will, now it's the sentencing phase. He is charged with murder, so he could face up to life in prison. The same exact juror, they're the ones who decide how long he remains behind bars. And that's what this sentencing phase sentencing phase is. That reporter inside the courtroom tells me that Karmelo Anthony's mother, she's already taken the stand. This is a direct quote. She said, quote, "He is my oldest, my firstborn, my baby. I love him very much." I'm told that she had mascara running down her face and asked the jury, quote, "Please have mercy on my son." And then the prosecutor sort of cross-examined her and said, "Isn't it true you could still have a relationship with your son while he's behind bars?" So this is sort of the next phase right now. The jury's going to decide how long he is behind bars for, and they're going to call some character witnesses, including his mom that you just heard from. And I'll step out of the way. I mean, outside the courtroom, we've been expecting this, Will, but about 100 Karmelo Anthony protesters erupted out here. At least one person was detained after they read that guilty verdict. And as you can see, it is all hands on deck when it comes to the sheriff's office. They prepared for this. There's been barriers out here and really tight security the last few days.
For months, family, certain voices online were telling their audiences that Karmelo Anthony was a victim. They said he was jumped. They said Austin and another young man were bigger, that Karmelo was outmatched, that he had no choice but to do what he did. They built an entire case on social media that this was self-defense, plain and simple. And anyone who said otherwise just didn't understand what, quote unquote, black boys face in this country. And look, I'm not here to tell you what to think, but I am going to tell you what the courtroom showed us. None of that narrative held up. Not a single piece of it was strong enough to convince 12 people who sat through every witness, every piece of evidence, and every argument from both sides. And the defense tried everything, family. They tried to argue self-defense. When they looked shaky, they tried to push the idea that Austin Metcalf somehow caused his own death. And according to reporting from inside that courtroom, when the defense floated that argument, the jury audibly gasped. Like they gasped. Literally gasped for air. That's the moment you know a legal strategy has completely fallen apart. When the people you're trying to convince are gasping at what you're saying, to be fair, I understand why people in the community felt protective of Karmelo. He was young, right? And I understand the sentiment, just understanding the perspective of, you know, he was black and there's real history in this country that makes people still feel suspicious anytime a black teenager ends up in a courtroom. Like I always say, racism was a horrible time in history, in our country's history, and no country is perfect, but we have came a long way. And I think that's the beautiful thing. And we should continue to see, we should continue to remove color and see unity and see all of us as individuals with unique talents, loving on each other and unifying regardless of the race, but pushing the envelope for productive conversations to continue to not only evolve and continue to advocate and also promote productive citizens in our communities as Americans, doing our civic duties, voting, uplifting each other, and continue to understand that we should unify to continue to help this country grow the same way we unify in war when it comes to our military from all backgrounds, uniquely fighting. And thank you, whoever's watching this who was in the service or is in the service, my serviceman and my servicewoman, thank you for your service. Truly, my heart goes to you and your family because all of the beauties and the privileges and things that we have together, I mean, we have in this country is because of the bloodshed and the fight from so many servicemen and servicewomen and families and, veterans and et cetera, et cetera. So if we could come to unity, Asian, black, white, from all backgrounds with bloodshed to defend our country, we should also have the same mindset when it comes to being productive to keep our country on the right side of history, also helping the next generation. Because no matter whether you want to believe it or not, family, our decisions and the actions we take, someone's always looking, whether know how big or small of influence. And that also sets the precedent for the next generation because our decisions are bigger than us, whether we believe it or not. All right. Not to go on a whole tangent, but I truly believe that. And we came so far and it's beautiful. And I think we should continue to push towards diversity, unity, and coming together and removing color and divisiveness. Right. And the way to kill racism is to not feed into it, to add fuel to the fire, to entertain it. And I took that word from Morgan Freeman. Now, to take it to another perspective, for me growing up in a black family, a lot of individuals in the black community, they do look up to Martin Luther King in his speech, I Had a Dream speech. Let's take the content of our character and remove the racism part because you want to be technical. Martin Luther King looked at the content of each other character to continue to develop and push the envelope to come together as far as we have come beautifully. So let's uphold that, right? But still, some people just acknowledging and letting you guys understand the perspective. I'm not telling you how to think, but these are individuals, as you guys see from the protests breaking out, that feel the suspicions and still have the mindset of suspicions when it comes to a black individual in the courtroom. That feeling doesn't come from nowhere. I'm not dismissing it, but here's the thing. When we take that real and violent pain and we use it to defend something that facts don't support, we're not protecting a community. None of our communities, regardless of race. We're actually making it harder for the next young man who generally does need that protection, right? From any background, any race, any skin color. And the voices who spent months pushing this self-defense story aren't going to stand up right now and say they got it wrong. They're going to say the jury was rigged. They're going to say the judge interfered. You heard it. In the first clip, they said this dumb judge interfered, quote unquote, and won't let cameras in the courtroom. This is not I'm not going to say the word. It's not a great case. But if you're seeing this type of behavior outside of the courtroom, would it make it any better for those emotional families in there when I feel both families, it's not good for either. Both families are hurt. Both families lost something. And a lot of people I understand in the comments are saying Karmelo Anthony isn't lost. He's still here. Yes, but you heard also in this clip that they said you will still have, they told the mother you will still have a relationship with your son behind bars. Is that really freedom, family? So technically it's a loss for the community, for the families. So to add cameras in there on type of the mindset that I just gave you the perspective of how they're feeling to basically cause this uproar that's happening outside of the courthouse It's not protesting peacefully. It's getting out of hand. That's why law enforcement is present. And thank goodness they were proactive instead of reactive, and this judge as well. But they're saying the judge interfered. They're saying it's racism, right? The mindset of those who feel, the ones who won't say they were wrong when they spend months saying this pushing this self-defense story about Karmelo Anthony. Pure and simple, they're going to move on to the next case. They continue to move the goalposts, is my point, to justify this self-defense story and racism. But here, instead of the facts, but here's what that kind of response actually does to the young generation, the next generation, sons, daughters, you name it. And that's the conversation we need to have right now. And I'm speaking as a 27-year-old young man who has a little guy myself, right? Think about what a 5-second decision actually costs, family. Not 5 minutes, not a long argument that build up over days. 5 seconds. That's roughly how long it takes to pull a knife and use it. And that 5 seconds took Austin Metcalf's life, and it's going to take the best years of Karmelo Anthony's life too. Karmelo Anthony is 19 currently at the time, right now, today. He was 16 at the time, Karmelo Anthony. Austin Metcalf was 17. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm always open to the possibility of being wrong. But we're talking about a teenager who, if sentenced to the maximum, could be looking at decades behind bars before he even gets a real shot at adulthood. Brain don't even fully develop, from my understanding, until the late 20s. Your prefrontal lobe, right? 2 families destroyed. 1 young man gone forever. Another young man whose future is now in a courtroom and a cell. And all of it traces back to a choice made at a track meet on what started as an ordinary afternoon. And Karmelo Anthony was asked from Austin Metcalf can he remove himself from a tent that wasn't even his team's at a track meet 15 times. It came out. And this couldn't have been his first rodeo. I'm pretty sure there was plenty other track meets before Karmelo Anthony happened to be at this track meet with Memorial High School, which is Austin Metcalf High School. And I want to ask you something. I want you to really sit with it. What are we teaching our sons and daughters in the young generation about what strength looks like? Because somewhere along the way, a message got into the culture that says real strength means you don't back down, you don't walk away, you never let somebody get the last word on you. And I understand where that comes from, right? I grew up hearing that at one point from a different perspective. But here's what that message actually produces when it gets taken to its logical end. It produces moments exactly like this one. A conversation that could have ended with 2 teenagers walking in opposite directions. Instead, ended with a knife and a funeral in a courtroom. Real strength, family, and I mean this with everything in me. Real strength is the ability to read a situation. Recognize that your life is worth more than winning an argument and walk away before it becomes something that you can never take back. That is harder than pulling a knife. That takes more discipline, more maturity, and more actual courage. And the gifts that these 2 young men had in this situation, because it's a loss. They had to tap into some discipline to be running track. So they got it in them. That's the frustrating part, because they got the discipline in them. Right? So the discipline was there. It just needed to be exercised in this situation. It takes discipline, more maturity, and more actual courage. Right? Than anything else a young man can do, or a young woman, or in a younger generation can do in a heated moment. When the emotions is high, logic leaves. I have learned this from my own anecdotal experience. You know how when someone is not understanding you and you think you can keep saying things over and over to make them understand or get them to understand because you just want them to understand you so bad, because you can't make nobody do anything. Let me rephrase that. You know how when you love someone and you're having a passionate conversation and you just want them to acknowledge where you're coming from and understand you wholeheartedly. So you think saying it over many different times in a similar way is going to make them understand. Sometimes you have to allow someone to sit in what you said the first time and leave it there so then they can actually sit on it and actually absorb it, to sit with what was said, to actually understand it. Everybody doesn't get it right then and there, especially if it's a new perspective. But that's the beauty of it's a time and a place for everything. Timing is what's important. You wouldn't have a disagreement with your spouse and a disagreement or a hard conversation with your spouse or someone you love in the midst of everyone in the room, right? Because then it crowds the conversation to be overridden, and also crowds with everybody else's perspective and opinion instead of you two. And you already know when it takes two to have a conversation, but if it's crowded with so many different opinions, it's not really productive, is my point, right? Class is dismissed, I always say, when everybody leaves the room, when it comes to your faith, when it comes to sports, whatever you're trying to achieve that is good, legal, positive, your health, your nourished relationships for those you really love and care about. Doing the work, you have to do it alone within yourself to continue to get better. And understanding that after you do the work yourself, which is sitting with yourself, understanding a different perspective to help nourish that relationship or something you need to work on within yourself you happen to come across. But sitting with yourself and allowing things to settle sometimes can help you reset and also have a productive outlook on things, because the best ideas come in the unexpected moments when you're actually sitting with yourself and being still. And I know it's hard sometimes because you got a lot going on, economy, things like that. But sitting still would actually bring solace to what you're trying to do, because then that's when the greatest, brightest outlook on things actually take effect. We think moving a lot. You can move in place multiple times. That doesn't mean that you're getting things done in an efficient, effective way. So sitting with yourself and that person that disagree with you, saying what you say respectfully, and let the situation sit there and marinate, and they'll come back and say, I get what you were saying. But saying it multiple times will actually make it worse, because you want them to get it right then and there on your time. So timing is crucial, is what I'm saying. So I'm saying all this to tie it together that Proverbs chapter 16, verse 32 puts it plainly. It says, a patient man is better than a warrior, and someone who controls their temper is better than someone who captures a city. That's not soft, that's wisdom that has outlasted every empire ever built. So I want you guys to check out this last clip, okay?
That has heightened things as well. And it looks like my photographer is telling me they are arresting someone right now. See if we can get a little bit closer. Like I mentioned, I'm not surprised that they made this arrest quickly, because deputies here have been making sure that. Sorry, we are moving a little bit closer. I'm not surprised that this arrest happened quickly, because deputies have made their presence clear that they are not going to tolerate any form of chaos. And looks like they have taken him out. They have taken somebody in custody. Fight still happening right now. I'm looking at one baby right now with a bottle in his mouth. So there are little kids here and families, and you have all of this going on, Martha.
Brooke, give us an indication of what to expect next in terms of whether or not the prosecution will be coming out to talk about the outcome of this case. Do we expect to hear from the Metcalf family members or the Anthony family members? And what about sentencing? Do we know yet what the plan is for that?
So right now there is a gag order in place. So no one is allowed to speak to the media until the sentencing portion of this. So I don't expect to hear from any family members or any of the prosecutors.
So there you have it, right? And right now, both of these families needed a young man who had that wisdom on the field, right? That I mentioned with Proverbs chapter 16, verses 32. The activists who stood outside that courthouse crying are going to move on. Next week, there'll be another case, another hashtag, another round of videos telling the community who the real victim is. But the Metcalf family doesn't get to move on. They buried their son. And the Anthony family doesn't get to move on either, because their child is now convicted of murder. Nobody in this situation gets a clean break from this. So we're going to have a real conversation that actually protects the next generation, the next young man, the next young woman. It can't start with the system. It has to start with your household. Just mention this in this clip, and I actually incorporated and involved this clip for a reason. You see how she said that they even have babies out there absorbing the ruckus. The ruckus. And she said babies are out when all of this is going on and someone got arrested. It has to start in the home. The dinner table, barbershop, hair salon for the young ladies. Wherever we have access to the youth who are still being shaped, and we have to tell them the truth. Accountability starts with you, me, everyone, every single one of us. Our choices belong to us individually. And no movement, no activist, and no hashtag can walk into that courtroom and undo what Karmelo Anthony hands did. Justice was served here, but nobody actually won, family, is the point I'm making. Two families are broken and no verdict changes that. The real lesson from all of this isn't about what happened inside that courtroom. It's about the choices we make long before we ever get close to one. So I want to hear from you. Do you think the community, all of our communities, is having the right conversation about this? Or are we still talking around the real issue? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications so you never miss a breakdown. Spread the peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. As always, we just having a conversation. I thank you for watching this video. Hope you got some value from this video. And I know, family, peace.